When I first saw them, I can't answer it easily. I think the question of permission is the key, and that where you source the image from is the key. And if people imagine that you've simply um, violated her privacy as if this were her body, that's clearly a simplification to prove a point, a feminist point about ownership and rights, which is a different thing from what you're doing here, I think.
I feel like it's hard to escape the feeling that you, as an artist, have done something to her.
Personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like, it seems obvious, actually.
Yeah.
This is what it's about, what you're allowed to do, isn't it, in many respects?
An image is only perceived by the person who perceives it, you know, and we all have different perceptions of what you've presented to us, you know, so no, we don't really have any control of our own image.
The control you have lessens the more you're in public sphere, I think.
She has consented to have the BBC put those videos of her out there, and I've consented to have my pictures on Facebook, say, but what license does that give other people to take those photos and reinterpret them?
Once your image is out there in the popular imagination, you no longer have any control over it. Whether that's right or wrong, whether we should limit that, whether we should control it, whether we should say, actually, you know, my image can't be used in that way, or you shouldn't use her image in that way, but it is there, so it's almost, once it's out there, whether that image is in people's minds or whether that image is being reproduced in a meme or in a, you know, being spliced and their voice put together and making them do something, it's that potential is always there once the image is out there. And I guess it's the limitations of consenting to being a public figure.
Yeah. Or just being on Facebook.
Yeah, just being there.
If everything we do, everything we put our face, our name, our words to, is what other people see of us, and we care about that because we have to make our way in the world.
Is it just a question of the copyright ability, as it were, or whether the thing is in the public domain because it's online? So there's a lot of threads there that we haven't completely thought through, I think, as to whether I have the right to prevent you, let alone do you have the right. And the assumption is that my image is rather like me. It's not the same thing. And my image online is already further away from my control. So then if you see it and respond to it and use it, it's not like you are taking my photograph and using it.
They're too idealised. The bodies are because you go in and think they're nudes of Ruby Tando.
Yeah.
That, and you think that's it. You know, he knows Ruby, and you know, it's he's a successful artist who knows famous people, and
Let's not be offensive, but Ruby is a B-lister, and there is always the possibility it could be her.
You know, look at the drawings, and it actually looks as though you've maybe had somebody in a life class. So it doesn't look as though you've taken somebody else's head and put it on somebody else's body. So therefore, for people that didn't understand what was happening with it, maybe it would be, okay, so she's posed naked for you. I suppose it creates the opportunity for people to sexualise her by looking at her body.
And so this is the thing about celebrity. These mashups happen. Celebrities get put on porn sites or porn models, and even now moving images. And people are going to do that, and people are going to believe it, and that's the worst thing. Or are you asking, can you regulate it? Not a chance. Should you? No way. Censorship. No form of censorship is good censorship. You've just got to recognise the process and the zeitgeist that you live in, and you have to embrace it but understand as much as possible.
To be honest, now more than ever, after the Charlie Hebdo thing, your pen is, you know, you're allowed to write and draw whatever you want. You are. It's the freedom of speech, freedom of drawing, freedom. You know, it's. You know, you are allowed.
I think the line here is that you've made what seems like her naked body accessible to people. she wouldn't have done.
I think it's very different for people who are quite obviously in the public sphere and people who aren't. I mean, if I went and drew some nudes of Will here, they probably wouldn't be pretty, but
they're getting prettier, man. They're getting prettier. Believe me.
But like, there's a vast difference between I do that and then someone say if I did a picture of David Cameron. Like, there's because when you're in the public sphere, I think you're in the public sphere, and there's sort of like a tacit consent, or you're photographed billions of times every day.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, it's a good question of property and whether, should these pictures be allowed, because doesn't Ruby own her face? Doesn't Ruby own her body, even though this isn't necessarily her body?
It's like Campbell's soup moaning about Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
It's like it's Durex moaning about Tracy Emin's bed. You know, it's like it's
you're missing the point. It's art. We can do anything.
I think you've done something very interesting, and you've started a really a very interesting conversation about that. Is this exploitative or derogatory? I would say not at all, personally. I think, but then it's not anyone, so it's not possible to identify the attention with anyone as such. It's a general picture about something else.
Yeah, I mean, some of the greatest spiritual teachers fully admit that they know absolutely nothing.
Right.
And that just comes from the most open place for anything to manifest in front of them, and they can be anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the ideal. So yeah, it's like as soon as you start saying, well, I'm this and I'm this and I'm this, and she's that and he's that and I do that and they do that. Like, when people go, oh, what do you do?
Yes, exactly. Like, what do
I really enjoy having a good long shower. And they're like, whoa, what is you, man? I'm talking about showers. I'm trying to box you here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just like wiggling all over the place. And it's stuff like that, like jolting other people's perceptions of what questions they're asking, why they're asking them.
Right,
like, what do you do? Essentially, they're trying to put you in a box so they can understand you by asking one question. Or I'm a lawyer. Oh, right, okay, so you do
Got
this.
You.
And
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about that. But no, like, let's talk about the best, shower gel.
I don't know. I mean, arguably she's in the public sphere. All these bodies are in the public sphere, like taken from the internet, aren't they, and stuff. Can you mash them together?
As a public figure, I mean, most public figures will tell you, your face and your body, whatever pictures that are available to the public they're intellectual property. They're not really property of you. If you want to be private, then it's not to say that you never take pictures, but they don't publish them, and part of being a public figure, whether you're, an A-lister or, you've been on a reality TV competition, a big part of that is accepting that, yes, these pictures are now available for public consumption, and they can be used in a matter of ways. Ruby and every other public figure has no control over how the person who uses those pictures uses them.
I think when you use someone's face, though, it has a really strong link with their identity. Like, if you'd used her body with someone else's face, it wouldn't seem like her at all.
I think there is a respect about just asking the individual. Because if you were to think about everything, like all the different scenarios, we'd be like, in the end, I lean towards permission. Because I can get their point of view.
But then stealing leans towards ownership. You can only steal something if somebody owns it. So it depends on how enlightened the person you are that you're stealing from is.
And how you define stealing. Yeah.
I believe that
as human beings, it's natural that we attract each other. So, you know, even though I'm in a relationship, I can still look on the telly and see Denzel Washington and get horny.
Human being.
Because it's normal.
Hear the word, HB.
Human being, yeah.
Yes, we all objectify people, and I think a lot of like the kind of like irreverent like feminist response to male objectification of women is to objectify men back, right? That's often like a survival tactic. Sorry, that's often like objectifying men back is often a survival tactic, and a fun one.
We often look at men, don't we? And we'll go, "Oh, he's a bit of alright."
And
we
argue over
whose he is, you know, and all this sort of thing, and have a bit of a laugh about it.
It's like, you know, that make people feel enjoyable and empowered and whatever else. But I think maybe the root problem is not so much whether it's art or whether it's just fantasy. Obviously, displaying things in public has more implications or different implications than thinking about stuff in private or drawing stuff in private. But I think maybe the problem is this kind of root of how we understand sexual relationships. So that because we are brought up in this kind of this heteronormative society, we understand the couple form to be one of unequal power and the sexual form to be one of subject and object.
And so that's why I do see, like, yeah, there's that feminine energy that's very overt here. And, you know, because in this picture she's being subjected to something, and in sex usually, even within the LGBT community, the more feminine role is to be submissive, typically.
We can fit roles and then it automatically, you become one thing, they're another thing, that fits. Then you force each other almost to stay in those roles, so you create this whole. But life's just not like that. We're never one thing, you know, and we should never have to be. That's when we're most beautiful, when we're so fluid. And so if one person's doing one thing and another person's doing another thing and you're in these roles, then you've nowhere to go. Nothing's going to grow, nothing's going to change.
And that we, perhaps our imaginations are stunted because we're not able to imagine a couple form that could be subject and subject, or something wider than a couple form, you know, that you could be polyamorous or whatever else.
And a friend of ours, and she's very open.
She's
and she's
not
very promiscuous.
afraid.
Very
The most
promiscuous.
respect
And
her.
the very long-term promiscuous relationships. It's very much like she could be with one man in Manchester for 5 years. She could be in London for 6 years.
she's not afraid.
She'll have a man in Grenada for 8 years. She'll have all at the same time. And then she'll have a man
in Jamaica.
for
She had
say,
one in-
that's 3
yeah.
years, and it's nothing to her. And she's
No.
quite open about it.
she's happy.
And if anyone, she sees someone she wants, and she's got all that, if she can get peace off them, she will.
She's ready. She's not afraid. She's
Yeah,
not
but
afraid.
when people hear that of her, they're dead disgusted. But when it's a man,
Yeah, it's nothing.
when Harry, it's nothing.
It's nothing.
Even when we substitute different genders or different creatures, you know, like in like Wind in the Willows or like whatever, or in
Greek
children's
vase
stories,
with the goat
like you
bear.
still have these two roles, even if they're occupied by different characters. The roles are always dominant, submissive, object, subject, and they might change even over time. In a day, you know, one person in the couple might be more dominant than the other, but that's almost like our imaginations are so limited that we're not able to see that.
But I read the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and there was two characters in there, and their difference was the fact that they actually wanted to just be in a monogamous relationship because they were in a society that wasn't about that. They were just about, you know, loveless sex or whatever. Procreation is done through test tubes and all of that. But they broke away from that, and I think the powerful message in that was saying that even when you try and construct it the other way, there's something in nature about two who just want to be together. I do think it's an individual choice. There are some people that are, you know, they don't want to settle. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the problem is when people are judging that choice, the individual's choice.
Perhaps the reason that it causes outrage is because it reminds us of like how poor our understanding of love is, and our understanding of sex. We just have such a like poverty of concepts or of ways of being together.
I think immediately I was like, oh, I can see how people get their knickers in a twist about that, yeah. But, you know, having now processed that shit, like whatever. If people want to get hung up on it, go for it.
They automatically dismissed it. You know, some weirdo, you know, some arty guy in dreadlocks, you know, with naked pictures of Ruby Tando who's never met, and it's all very what I'm writing to our local MP type stuff. It's like, fuck's sake. I feel I went from, oh, lovely art exhibition, free booze, nice one, to feel a bit dirty. And it's like, yeah. So, nice job.
I think art is to be talked about, and you just like it or you don't like it.
Sticking Ruby Ruby Tando's face on a nude does not make an artist make, in my opinion. Doesn't make sense, but
they think they've done something radical by sending that out, don't they?
I just thought it was interesting.
What would be radical actually is standing in the gallery, like Carl did, I guess, standing there talking, you know, like, well, actually, I think it's, you know, wrong or this or that. But at the same time making some interesting points about the actual artwork itself. For example, bikini or tan lines, what he was talking about, her nakedness, how it was so much more naked. And also, you know, obviously the fact that you'd chosen these images and that they were taken from sort of porn sites or whatever from the internet. Him standing there and talking about it and engaging with people around him who could listen to him and disagree with him and who clearly loved what you'd done, loved it. He actually did the right thing. He did and he did it on the spur of the moment. He didn't have weeks to stew about it and think about it. He saw it there and then and responded immediately.
And also he didn't read the thing and then act first before seeing the pictures, whereas some of these girls, they seem to have read whatever we put out, really got stuck on the fact that it was nude Ruby Tando, and not bothered to really see past, to actually look at the pictures and to see the skill in the image. I mean, because you can take those pictures at two different levels. You can see them, you know, I know Amartey wants to see them as an intellectual, you know, conversation and spurring people's opinions, but actually I think a lot of the people that came to our gallery to see the show were just really astounded by the sheer beauty of the marks, you know. And I know that's a different level of seeing this stuff. It's almost like just seeing.
I feel that the work ambushes you, and that's my feeling about it. When you first sent me one image, which I believe was tan lines. I think it was tan lines. And it shocked me. It really did shock me. Because it's a full frontal image. It's probably the most difficult image, I think, that was in the space. And actually, by the end of it, it was probably the one I admired the most of all the work. It was so unapologetic in what it was doing. And it shocked me because it was, like I said to you before, like seeing, I don't know, I can't remember whose name I evoked, you know, anybody else famous naked, you know, it would be... you know, Margaret Thatcher naked or something, because what I mean is a very well-known face, and then oh my God, she's naked. I think that's my first, and then the questions begin to come about how you made it and then why you made it, and then the sort of creepiness element about the process or the idea of making it, and that whole thing of making it in your bedroom, much like dirty little boys do with their, you know, Photoshop and, you know, imagine Jennifer Lawrence
YouTube or
whatever it is they do. But it was actually an interesting process as the person in the gallery to see how people reacted. They came in, they were impressed, they were intrigued. They liked the quality of the line. They liked the way you shaded areas. And then one of them, there's normally a couple, one of them would say, she looks familiar. because you'd wait for them. I would never offer up the information right at the beginning, although they had the information written.
It was
there,
written, yeah,
and things were
like I
already
said,
out
no,
by that
I don't
point.
think a lot of
So the
people do
process
that.
was slow like that, and then she looks familiar, and then I would say, do you watch the Bake Off? And then they go, yeah. Oh, is it that Ruby? Yeah. And then we'd have, oh yeah. And then the husband would normally sort of joke about the fact that no, he doesn't watch the Bake Off, or roll his eyes or something. And then they would sort of laugh about the fact that we all knew what we were talking about, and we're all admitting to watching this reality TV programme. And then there'd be this kind of dawning, like they're thinking, so did she pose for these? And then
one of them even said, "Is she nice?"
Yeah. and then you'd
What's she
start
like in real life?
then the
No,
discussion would
didn't
move
mean it.
on. So, and this is fairly standard what went on. Really lovely. And then they'd go, oh, but she, oh, and then you go, no, she didn't actually pose for the pictures. And then you would start talking about how you made the work, why you made the work, and all that kind of thing. And people were fascinated, and they weren't angry.
We were still talking about it last night, actually.
Yeah.
Some people that came in.
It
was still quite a big topic.
The ideas, the story, everything about it still has legs. You know, it's an ongoing thing that still amuses, but it was quite revelatory seeing how people responded to the work, wasn't it? And then I thought it was so interesting the day that those young women came in from the school, and you stood there and you were having a bit of difficulty engaging them in talking about the work, except when you asked that question, which just I just thought it was a hoot, and you said, well, how would you feel, because you were trying to get a response, how would you feel if somebody made a picture of you and then put it on a naked body? And they said, I wouldn't mind.
And I think the teacher then said, well, if he makes me look like her, then I'd be really happy.
But I thought that was interesting as well, because we all were kind of like, that's not what we expected.
No, they weren't that like, no.
And that was an education.
They didn't really sort of...
because that's how young people feel about their privacy now, and about putting themselves out there, and how they're seen out there by their peers or anybody. They don't seem to have that sense of... I really found that hilarious.
Yeah.
So obviously my generation now is like, that's all out there. Like, people put pictures up of themselves in the bikinis on Instagram and on Facebook, so that's normal for me. Like, a naked body is normal, but I'm like, I don't know. I do underwear modelling myself, so I love walking around in my underwear. I'm happily doing that, but because you're older, you may see it as different, don't know.
See, this is what I don't like, when this word misogynistic is thrown around so like kind of easily. Like, to say something is misogynistic is to say it's kind of there's inherent violence towards women in it, and I don't see that at all.
Was this work ever compared to anything else of like what they thought was in the same vein or anything like that?
Well, I don't know, but you have this kind of tradition of the nude in a kind of like gentleman's club, don't you, up on the wall? Or
Which is why he is the last one standing. He's the last one that we can still completely take the piss out of. You know, that he is still fair game. Which is what I've said to you in the past when we've talked about who I feel, is fair game in this society. And it's the David Camerons of this world who basically are the top of the tree, and they still are, and they are invincible, and they're untouchable, and that's why we can still laugh at them and take the piss out of them. Whereas everybody else is in a level of victimhood.
And also
and therefore it's not unacceptable. It's like laughing at disabled people. And you know, there are levels of what's acceptable, and the white, middle class man is totally up there, and women are still somewhere sort of fairly high up there. Not black women, or gay women, but middle-aged white middle-class women like me are sort of somewhere up there for the piss-taking. And then it goes down like that, definitely, what's acceptable.
But I think with the gays, with the male gays, it's something that you're brought up with. It's something that you're sold to on one of these screens. It's this 2D little portal that you're sold all these images, and we buy into it. And unless somebody guides you in the right way to go, then you're going to make those assumptions. And we need to, you know, it needs to be said that that's what's happening. You know, now more than ever. I mean, you think about it. We, you know, I don't want to say on, you know, that give away my age or anything, but when you go through a technological advance like we have in the last 10 years, 20 years, it's pretty mind-bending the fact that these things didn't exist. And the cultural shift is happening right now, and it's that paradigm shift that is really difficult to deal with in terms of someone who, you know, it's an adjustment that's constantly going on. I mean, these things might not even be there in a couple of years, it'll be something else, and then we're going to have to readjust, and that readjustment comes in a readjustment on a cultural, social level, as well as a technological level, and I think that's got a lot to do with it. And I mean, art that says that is, as you know, I think that's what makes good art.
It's like one of those taboo topics that is like swept underneath the carpet, and those sort of thoughts are not really addressed.
What?
So like in the terms that what is acceptable, you know, like men in this society will be looking at naked images of women all the time, and in some cases they'll be looking at women imagining what they look like naked, and is that right? You know what I mean? And I feel artwork like this is addressing that taboo, that unspoken stuff.
Or is it just an exploration of the way that we live in this society, this media society, where people are constantly being thrust in our faces, celebrities, sportsmen, sportswomen, like, you know, all these, you know, TV constantly on and everyone watching it, and no one even bothering to socialise anymore because everyone's just gawking on Facebook. I mean, like, you know, everyone's in the public sphere. If you have a Facebook account, you're in the public sphere now. You have countless photos. I mean, I've got hundreds of photos on my profile, and while you can control to an extent who looks at them, I mean,
it's how, say, the first impression, like what first impression you get of that image, and if you think it's acceptable or you think it's appropriate, then it is. But
well, where do we get this from? Is it part of the collective within our cultures and societies and religions that are giving us this message? So it's like, how often do people make that? So the difference between men and women.
No, it's just that sex is a big industry now, and sex sells more than everything.
It is, but you know, this has been for a long time. So this long-term thing of, you know, it's okay for boys to have lots of one-night stands and all these girls.
But a girl's seen as a
But for a girl to do it, you know, we have a different message and a different.
Do you know what? I was having this conversation with someone the other day actually, and they turned around and said, well, it's kind of acceptable for boys because it's not intruding the space. Like, women's bodies are seen as temples, yeah, and like that. It's like, obviously to have sex we go inside of ourselves and we connect that way. With men it's just, it's not the same.
Some people care if they get a derogatory name, and some people don't.
Yeah.
And what I find sometimes with people, they want to live a certain way, but then they don't want to be condemned.
Like,
And why is that? Why is it different?
yeah, that's another. I guess that's another. Yeah, right. That's another issue that is being forced to come out as a result of this art, which essentially I believe art should do in any case. It should question things in society or bring things out for conversation.
Okay.
Like the unspoken things should be ripped out, and you know, so that certain deeper things can be addressed. Misogyny and patriarchy and that sort of sexism are serious issues that plague our society currently.